Martin, you know something that's not lost on me, and it's maybe a couple of points back when you were talking about investigation of situations, and also at the moment, the approach that the regulators are broadly taking in terms of asking for risk assessments and then perhaps some of the interactions that companies have with the regulators is around the way that they investigate these psychosocial or psychological incidents. What's not lost on me is how, in traditional health and safety, I don't remember seeing a time where a regulator was critiquing and giving feedback on the way an investigation was performed. And that just feels so different to, I was going to say normal health and safety, and please don't give me bad comments about that because I can't think of a different word. But it's really interesting, isn't it? If regulators, what they're focusing on is the process of investigation in addition to the actual context of what was happening as well.
Yeah, yeah, it is a very different approach, and look, regulators are still are coming up that learning curve as well. So it's difficult for them also, and it's also a new skill set for regulators to introduce because they've always been investigating physical safety, not the mental health and well-being. So it's a challenge for them as well, and but I think that in the last probably 12 months in Australia, there's some interesting case law that's come out of the industrial courts around psychosocial safety complaints, and people are using those psychosocial safety hazards not only um, not only from a regulator's perspective, so the regulator coming in and prosecuting you, they're using them in other areas of law. So an example being there was um, there was a case about 5 6 months ago in Australia. It's called Vision Australia, which is a charity for people who struggle with sight. So there was a particularly prickly individual who worked there who just generally wasn't a great person to be around. And he was given a warning through their HR process and then didn't change his behavior and was eventually terminated. So he took that company to court for unfair dismissal and won. In Australia, the unfair dismissal process limits the amount of money that you can claim. So he got, I think, $27,000 in damages, which was the maximum that he could get. But Vision Australia had a HR process to investigate complaints, and they didn't follow their own procedure and made mistakes and errors. He then took them to court and said because they didn't follow their own procedure, that caused him a psychological injury. And the court upheld that and said, yes, that's correct. And awarded him $1.3 million in damages. So, so people are using the psychological safety angle to take legal action for other areas of law around termination and breach of contract. So it's really important for organizations to review their procedures, and when you do review them, man, you need to follow them. Like, don't just write a bit of paper and leave it on the shelf. Like, because as a regulator, I've lost count of the number of times I've prosecuted an organization and used their own procedures against them. So, like, sometimes less is more. The law is around managing risk. I think in Australia, there's about four things that the law says you must write down. Outside of that, it doesn't say anything about procedures. It says you need to be able to produce evidence to show you've got a system of work. Generally, the easiest way to do that is to produce a procedure. But the challenge is to make sure the procedures got value to the work of safety that keeps workers safe, and then you follow it. Because if you don't, it's just a bit of paper. and it's not worth anything. Doesn't help workers, doesn't keep people safe, and it certainly won't protect you from being prosecuted by the regulator.